down in theaters to watch the much-anticipated adaptation of Frankenstein by Guillermo del Toro, my first thought was, why isn't it Girl Boss? Where are all the women CEOs? Why is the main character of Frankenstein a man? There are a lot of criticisms about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, largely having to do with the film not being feminist enough. If you were to check threads, you would think that Guillermo del Toro ripped Mary Shelley from the grave, slapped her in the face, and threw her in the ocean, all while laughing with Lord Byron all the way. But if you actually watch the movie, you might be shocked to find that none of those things happening, and it's actually a great adaptation of the novel. But the real question is it feminist? I aim to find that out.
So here we're pouring 2 ounces of vodka, 2 ounces of apple pucker, and it'll be 2 shots of sweet and sour. Mix it up with ice, pouring it into glass. We're gonna top this with, or sip this with a cherry for a garnish. We chose this one because it is a nice lime green color. Looks good for Frankenstein.
I don't think I did a good enough job cleaning this glass. Oh well. If we're going to talk about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein and whether or not it's feminist, we're of course going to have to talk about Frankenstein. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, a modern Prometheus. And if we want to understand Mary Shelley's feminism with Frankenstein, we have to understand romance.
You are the bane of my existence. And the object of all my desires.
No, I'm not talking about Bridgerton. At least, not today. I'm talking the Romantic movement, which Bridgerton was inspired by. No, we are not going to Shondaland. No, we're staying on track today. Mary Shelley and her husband, Percy Shelley, were both poets and authors of the Romantic literary movement. Now, when I say romance, I'm not talking rom-coms. I'm talking about the literary Romantic movement with the uppercase R. The Romantic movement with the uppercase R was about exploring unfiltered emotionality, advancements of science, and, most importantly, the ability to dominate over nature. That is Romantic literature. Or is it? You see, when we study the Romantic movement in literature, we're instructed to look mostly towards the works of people like Percy Shelley, William Wordsworth, or Lord Byron. But there are actually other authors within the Romantic literary movement, people like Jane Austen, Anne Radcliffe, and Frances Burney. Whoa, I'm sorry, look at that hat! How did I not study this woman just for her fashion alone? Wow, you are an icon, Miss Frances Burney. The women of the Romantic literature movement focused on emotionality, but moving in harmony with nature and in community with each other.
The glories of nature. What are men compared to rocks and mountains?
Believe me, men are either eaten up with arrogance or stupidity.
It valued equal partnerships between men and women and caring for others around you. You can't dominate nature because you can't be separated from it. That was the kind of romantic author that Mary Shelley was. It's pretty well known that Frankenstein was written in a weekend competition between Mary Percy and Lord Byron. More on him later. But what you might not know is that not only was Frankenstein written as a competition, but it was also based on a dream that Mary Shelley had after the stillbirth of her first child. In her journals, she described a dream in which her baby came to life again. Not only was Shelley grieving her infant loss when writing the novel, but she was also pregnant again at the same time. She was absolutely obsessed with the idea and possibility of creating life or reanimating death, as she was struggling to deal with those things herself, despite being, a woman and supposedly creating life is like literally what we all do.
Started well, that sentence.
It got away from me, yeah.
Either way, Frankenstein was a deeply personal book that spoke to so many people, so it's no surprise it actually became one of the most adapted works in all of history. Like, seriously, the most.
Ooh, a fresh pie. Save me a slice. That's good. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's... All right, that's good. Okay. All right, okay, all right. Okay, that's good. That's good. It's enough slices!
How many adaptations of Frankenstein do you think there are? Yeah, apparently there's over 1,000 adaptations of this thing, and according to those who love Mary Shelley's novel, not one of those adaptations is faithful. And, hear me out, maybe that's a good thing?
We have found the witch! May we burn her?
I'm not saying that Mary Shelley's novel is bad, dear God, I'm a fan! I'm a fan, I tell you! But what I am saying is that Mary Shelley's novel is just that, a novel. And for the most part, a novel does not have the same structure as a film because they're entirely different mediums. And because there's been so many adaptations of a novel that is over 200 years old at this point, there are certain adaptational changes that would almost make it feel incomplete if someone weren't to include them. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in 1994 is largely considered to be one of the most faithful adaptations of the novel, and it makes huge amounts of changes. They give Victor a different childhood with a smaller family, his mother dies in childbirth, none of which happened in the novel, and of course there's also the iconic scene where the creature is brought to life via lightning, which is also not in the novel. Yeah, did you know that?
I'm going to turn that ray on that body and endow it with life.
In the novel, Victor never actually revealed what his methods were to create the creature, and while it is hinted that lightning had to have played a part, it's more heavily implied to have been a chemical concoction that gives life to the creature, just like my Appetini gives life to me in depression. Another image most commonly associated with Frankenstein that is not in the novel is, of course, the bride of Frankenstein. The Bride of Frankenstein made her first appearance in the titular Bride of Frankenstein, and while she only was in the movie for a grand total of 2 minutes, she's almost become synonymous with the creature himself. So, when Guillermo del Toro, one of the beloved, misunderstood monster filmmakers, finally got his turn to create this masterpiece, there was a pretty high bar for him to live up to. But is it feminist, though?
Good God, Elizabeth.
Guillermo del Toro's adaptation of Frankenstein starts fairly faithfully to the novel, beginning with a ship trapped in the Arctic as it attempts to reach the North Pole. They find a man stranded with the sled dogs, bring him on board, and the man tells the captain his story of how he came to be there. But this is where the film takes a turn into its own thing. Now, for me personally, as a fan of the novel, there are a few story beats that must be included in any Frankenstein adaptation for me to actually consider it faithful. Anything else is just gravy. Those certain story beats include Victor Frankenstein's obsession with the study of medicine and life and death.
Why not study it? Why not quantify it? This is unholy, an abomination, an obscenity!
The creature's conversations with the blind man in the woods.
Make this your home, and I your friend.
Friend. Friend.
And the creature being overcome with grief and sadness when Victor inevitably dies.
Rest now, Father. Perhaps now we can both be human.
The reason I think these are the most important beats to include is because these are the moments of the story that I feel best capture the themes that Mary Shelley was working with at the time of the Romantic literary movement, especially with how her version of literary romanticism dealt with the concept of nature. Victor Frankenstein seeking to dominate nature represents the masculine romantic movement seeking to do the same.
Why is he chained here?
It doesn't know any better.
But you do.
While the blind man represents the feminine romantic seeking to harmonize with nature.
These people possessed a sound used it to tell each other about feelings and ideas. They called them words.
Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein has all of these moments, so for me, his Frankenstein was always going to be faithful enough to satisfy. But, for many others, the changes that get us to these moments are heavily contested as to whether or not they live up to Mary Shelley's work, or even, as is the case for a lot of these criticisms, whether they take a man's perspective on them.
A white man? No!
The three biggest changes that people are arguing over at this present moment are as follows: the character of Elizabeth, Victor's abusive childhood, and the creature in Victor making amends at the end of the film. And here's the thing. All of these changes fulfill a very important purpose with the character and the story that Guillermo del Toro is trying to tell, which, I dare say, not only elevates Mary Shelley's criticism of masculine romanticism, but evolves it to something far more relevant for modern-day viewers. In the novel, Victor Frankenstein had a happy childhood with 2.5 siblings. He had two brothers, Ernest and William, and his cousin Elizabeth, who he would be betrothed to for most of his life. I promise, she's adopted. This isn't a cousins-only situation. Or so I thought. You see, there are two different publications of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, something that I wasn't fully aware of by the time I recorded this. There is her initial publication of 1818, which is when she had that competition with Percy, Shelley, and Lord Byron. Byron! And in this original version, Elizabeth actually was their cousin by blood.
You married your cousin?
No.
But in the 1831 republication, Mary Shelley actually made a lot of changes, especially to the character Elizabeth, drawing a lot of parallels to Elizabeth and Victor's mother, but also not being related to them. And that was the version that I had read. And given the double casting of Mia Goth as both Victor's mother and Elizabeth, I actually think that this was also the one that Guillermo del Toro was most familiar with. So depending on the version of Frankenstein you yourself had read, Elizabeth may or may not be a little bit of incest. Don't you just love gothic romance? In Del Toro's version, however, Victor's family consists of only one brother, a mother who died in childbirth, and a very physically and emotionally abusive doctor of a father.
No, not your hands. Not anymore. They are now the instruments of your craft and will, and we must care for them. Your face, however, is vanity.
Elizabeth does come into the story later, but this time as William's fiancée, and in this version, she does not reciprocate Victor's affection, instead effectively becoming the bride of Frankenstein herself. I'm not going to pretend like these are minor changes. These are pretty big changes that do alter the structure of the story itself. But I will say that there is a method to the madness. When I was blessed enough to go to the Netflix premiere of Frankenstein, I actually heard Guillermo del Toro speak about his passion for this story and the thoughts that were on his mind when creating his adaptation.
If I made Frankenstein earlier, I would have done it a dialogue between me and my father. Now it's a dialogue between my father and me and my kids. Generational pain passed from one generation to the other, and how can you say, stop, let's move forward?
And for a lot of people, that is what they hated about this adaptation, because how dare this man take a story from a woman and make it about him and himself? But I would argue that's the most true way to adapt Frankenstein. Mary Shelley saw a lot of herself in the creature Victor Frankenstein creates. Like the creature, she herself was misunderstood and very isolated for much of her life. Some of this was because she was ahead of her time due to her political and literary upbringing by her very progressive parents, but also some of this was because, well, girl was a bit messy, to say the least.
I believe with all my heart there are all sorts of ways of living, and I will fight for anyone's right to live accordingly.
Her husband may or may not have been, but definitely was still married when they started dating. Mary Shelley often felt as though she herself was the creature, even down to the fact that neither of them actually have names of their own. Initially named after her mother and father, then later adopting her husband's last name, Mary Shelley has no unique name to herself, and neither does the creature. Mary Shelley is very much the creature. But she's also Victor, too. She, too, wanted to defy death and control life, the way many mothers who have lost their children or suffered miscarriage do. The most common understanding of her work in Frankenstein is that the creature is the victim and Victor is the monster.
In you, I have created something truly horrible. Not something. Someone. You made someone.
And I don't think necessarily Shelley would disagree, but I don't agree that she would say that Victor is all monster. Victor is who we all could be if we forget that creation is about more than our own wants and desires. This was her criticism of the masculine romantic movement. It wasn't so simple as man bad, non-man good. It was that we can create, but we cannot dominate. And that in and of itself is both a beautiful and terrifying feeling to grasp. But I think that Guillermo del Toro grasped it perfectly in his version. And I think that he brought Mary Shelley herself into the film to the fullest. Victor is given a different backstory, not only because it makes him a more sympathetic character, but it also gives Victor a reason for his obsession with life. A reason and backstory similar to Mary Shelley herself.
Would you ever consider trying to contact your mother?
Maybe she wouldn't want me to, given I was the one who killed her. She died just days after I was born.
After all, Mary Shelley's mother died in childbirth, and she herself always had a fascination with life and death and science, one that tragically grew after she miscarried her children. But more than just in Victor's story. This is my first one, and I've had too many. But more than just in Victor's story, Mary Shelley is also brought to life through the character Elizabeth. Elizabeth in the novel is boring. She is nothing. There is not a thought going on in her head. Just like me, hey, Lizzie? It's not really to the fault of Mary Shelley's character building, but it's just Elizabeth isn't really a person in the novel so much as she's a plot tool to represent goodness and happiness, only for the creature to tragically kill her later. She is the epitome of a wife and mother in the early 1800s, filled with joy and love for rearing children, but not much else. In Guillermo del Toro's version, however, Elizabeth is an outsider, a weirdo, someone who values science and even the smallest of life forms because they represent the purity and complexities of creation itself.
Insects.
My interest in science leans towards the smallest things, moving with nature, perhaps the rhythms of God.
Along with her passion for insects, she's extremely intelligent and, like Shelley herself, unafraid to tell a man that he ain't shit.
Are my ideas not clear?
You certainly expressed them loudly enough.
Are they not worthwhile?
Ideas are not worthwhile by themselves, I don't believe.
Like Shelley, Elizabeth is a woman restricted by the society she lives in, where she is often underestimated and undervalued strictly for the fact that she's a woman.
3 hearts, multiple eyes, white blood, and a fascinating lack of choice.
She's not truly seen by Victor or her fiancé William as a full person in and of herself, but instead seen for the roles that she plays in her lives. They see her as the Elizabeth of the novel, whereas the creature sees her for who she is, Mary Shelley.
Another monster. Yes. We can be monsters together.
That's also why I think it was the perfect choice to have her be the bride of Frankenstein as well as Elizabeth. It highlights the love that Mary Shelley had for the creature, how she loved and valued him as sympathetic, as the person that he was that no one else could see. The creature, Elizabeth, Victor, they're all Mary Shelley wrapped up in one. And they're all Guillermo del Toro wrapped up into one too, making this, in my opinion, a perfect adaptation of the story. Let me just say, if I hear one more person complaining about how Frankenstein does not pass the Bechdel test, I'm gonna kill myself.
Everything's wrong! The stress of—
Greta Gerwig Frankenstein requests.
has caused me to go into a depression.
Depression? Isn't that just a fancy word for feeling bummed out?
Dwight, you ignorant slut!
The Bechdel test was created by cartoonist Alison Bechdel in her comic strip Dykes to Watch Out For. Before you comment on the title, she herself is a lesbian, and I'm only using this word to quote her title. I'm only bisexual.
You are on this council, but we do not grant you the rank of master.
The test was inspired by Bechdel reading Virginia Woolf's essay, A Room of One's Own, when Bechdel lamented to her friend about a lack of female friendship representation in media. It was basically their version of the conversation, like, decenter men. It was super important, it was super powerful, but also a f***ing joke. Yeah, this test that has been ruining media literacy since white women discovered it in 2016, it began as a joke by lesbians and for lesbians. And while it is very important to have media that does not have female characters centering men, that is not the be-all end-all of feminist media. For you see, sometimes feminism has to involve men, especially if we want more men to understand feminism.
All they need to listen to women is the right voice, a man's voice.
Everyone loves a male feminist. It turns out the problem with feminism all along is it just wasn't men doing it.
I hate that I have to say that.
Yeah, this is truly a great day for women everywhere.
Frankenstein was a novel critiquing the male romantics of their time and their desire to dominate nature rather than moving in harmony with it. The fact that Elizabeth is not really a character of her own in the Frankenstein novel really well mimics the ways in which male romantic writers didn't see women as equals the way their female romantic contemporaries did with men in their stories. Because female romanticism was about equality of the genders and not the domination of any of them. There's this really weird gender essentialist conversation happening surrounding Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, where so many people are framing it as though a man could never tell a story written by a woman properly, which is why we need women to be the only ones directing Frankenstein. Just once, can't a woman tell a Frankenstein story? Here's the thing, women have been telling Frankenstein stories for almost as long as Frankenstein has been a story to begin with. In fact, some of the most infamous adaptational changes, such as, the abnormal brain thing, the creature never learning to speak, or the angry village mob, all of those were made by women adapting Frankenstein. And unfortunately, when we do get female-led versions of a Frankenstein story, faithful or not, they underperform at the box office because people don't go to see them. Lisa Frankenstein is one of my favorite Frankenstein stories to come out in recent years, and it absolutely bombed at the box office, which is so tragic because not only is that movie the best of 80s camp, but it was also directed by Robin Williams' daughter, so why didn't you go see it? Why did you make Robin Williams sad?
No, I can't. I can't do that. Not until we bury the body.
There's been so much misinterpretation of Shelley's work and life in these recent conversations, especially when people saw the Lord Byron quote at the end. Byron. Wait, I'm sorry, what? What do you mean Mary Shelley and Byron were friends? Yeah, turns out Mary Shelley and Lord Byron were actually besties. And I'm not even exaggerating when I say that. While Lord Byron was a fuckboy who wrote one of the stories that would continue to just irritate me to no end, if I see one more classic lit boy call himself Don Juan, I'm going to shoot somebody! At the same time, he may have been a fuckboy, but he was her fuckboy. While misinformation on Mary Shelley's life did not begin with the 2017 film Mary Shelley starring Elle Fanning, this movie definitely did popularize a lot of it. The movie took a lot of liberties with Mary Shelley's story, but the worst misinformation that it deals with is the depiction of Lord Byron specifically. The movie depicts him almost like a drunken rock star who preys on young girls. And, well, yeah, he kind of was that. But he wasn't that with Mary specifically. Lord Byron's relationship with Mary was extremely complex, with its own ups and downs. The movie depicts their interactions as non-consensual on Mary's part, and filled with Lord Byron putting her down for being a woman, when in actuality they had a lot of conversations on art, politics, and gender, and he agreed with her on much of these things. Both him and Percy Shelley were actually instrumental in getting Frankenstein published under Mary Shelley's name in 1820s. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Lord Byron was a good person. Lord Byron was a very complex figure in Mary's life, and the two remained friends until he passed away. And listen, do I think that it should have been a Mary Shelley quote? Yeah, absolutely. But people seem to think that Mary Shelley hated Lord Byron, and putting this quote there meant that Guillermo del Toro is a secret misogynist. Would she probably have hated it? Yeah, definitely. But more like that way in which your fuckboy best friend says a similar joke to yours, but louder and people actually laugh at it. That was their relationship. And Lord Byron actually was part of her inspiration for the writing of Frankenstein. So I don't think that it's entirely ill-fitting, but I also don't agree that it was the right choice. So I'm with y'all on that. It should have been a Shelley quote. But let's let the Byron versus Shelley debate die, please. Because every gothic introvert needs her fuckboy extrovert best friend who's always messy. That's just the balance of nature. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein is feminist because it still highlights the themes of creation that were there in Mary Shelley's work and whether or not you are supposed to dominate nature or nurture it. This time they're just told through the lens of generational trauma.
Victor. That horrible will that birthed me condemns me now.
And even if it is about a man, that is still feminist, and that is still the core of Frankenstein. Victor was literally always a deadbeat dad. Guillermo del Toro was just the first person to make that the movie. So, all in all, I'm glad Guillermo del Toro finally got to bring forward his version of Frankenstein. I'm glad this man who loves monsters finally got to create the monster that comforted him when he was younger, and comforted me. And I'm beyond glad that I was blessed enough to witness it at the red carpet premiere, and also here in the comfort of my own home. And I really, really hope you all enjoy it too. Especially all you monster fuckers out there. Y'all are probably living it up, and I don't want to see it. Hi there, and thank you for joining me on my new channel, where we're going to talk about feminist film. Woo! But in bimbo terms, because I'm nothing if not hot and dumb. One of the things that I really wanted to do with this channel is, instead of asking you to like and subscribe and share at the end, see that hint I dropped there? I'm also sharing mutual aid requests. The economy kinda sucks right now, and no one will explain to me why we can't just print more money. It's like right there. And because the economy sucks, people are struggling. Like one of my Patreon members, Zombie Agogo, who asked me to share their GoFundMe. If you cannot donate to a person in need, please be sure to like and share and subscribe, because once I hit monetization on this new channel, I'm going to be donating funds myself from portions of these videos to those mutual aid funds. But I can't do that until I'm monetized. And I need you to help me out. So if you like what you see, please be sure, like, subscribe. Conquer the world. I don't care as long as you stay here. Until then, I will see you in the next video. Bye.